On January the 24th of 2025, Indianapolis man Jarrell Pryor wrapped up his shift and headed for a late-night date with 19-year-old Alexis Hawkins. He'd been talking to her on Instagram, and that night marked the first time that they met each other in person. Pryor wanted to take Hawkins to a restaurant, but she reportedly appeared to be in a hurry, and they went to a McDonald's before heading to a liquor store. At around 1 a.m., roughly 2 hours after they'd met, Pryor was found in a pool of blood outside his vehicle in the 4900 block of East 49th Street on the northeast side of Indianapolis. He'd been shot through his stomach, right jaw, right chest, and lower right back. He was pronounced dead in a local hospital shortly thereafter. An examination of his phone revealed that Hawkins was the last person to have seen him alive, and the authorities obtained a search warrant for her phone as well. It emerged that the young woman had set Pryor up to be robbed and murdered. She initially denied having any connection to his killing, claiming that she couldn't remember anything from the night in question aside from hearing gunshots and running for cover. Hawkins told the police, "There's no weapon to say I did anything. My fingerprints aren't on anything." However, hours before meeting the victim, she'd texted her on-off boyfriend, 18-year-old Brian Winston, and written about making a play, adding, "Been trying to find some licks if you need me to rob anybody down here." When the police confronted her with the evidence, she asked for a lawyer. The authorities concluded that while she was planning out the date with Pryor, Hawkins was simultaneously coordinating with Winston to rob and kill him. In messages exchanged about 4 hours after the shooting, Winston told her, "Don't say too much and delete these messages too, by the way." 26-year-old Pryor was a single father raising a young daughter who was at home with the family while he was out. In the wake of the murder, Pryor's mother said of her granddaughter, "I pray for her to have a supernatural memory so that she can remember him, because we all deserved Jarrell." As of the latest updates on the incident, Hawkins and Winston were charged with murder and robbery. Number 10. Jon Dennis Gurney. Leading up to 2020, Australian bodybuilder Jon Dennis Gurney faced a plethora of charges, including assault and multiple counts of fraud in connection to his despicable behavior towards multiple women he'd met on dating apps. He reportedly targeted victims in Queensland and would stay with them for a few days before stealing property and leaving. He was subsequently detected using their credit cards at various locations. In August of 2020, Gurney was arrested on an outstanding warrant by North Brisbane police. One of his victims, whom he'd met online in 2019, also accused him of drugging and abusing her. He'd reportedly spiked her beverage with MDA, telling her, "I hope you enjoyed that last drink because we are going to have some fun when we get home." Gurney allegedly assaulted her at her residence that night and fled the next day, leaving behind a post-it note that read, "Sorry, babe." Aside from fraud, the other charges against him included robbery, unlawful use of a motor vehicle, willful damage, and using a carriage service to menace, harass, or cause offense. During the legal proceedings that followed, he was acquitted of the spiked drink assault, with his lawyer accepting nevertheless that he'd used the woman in question. News.com.au reported that in May of 2022, Gurney was convicted and not further punished on 22 summary offenses. That month, he was given a sentence of over 2 years, suspended for 4 years, after battering 2 young men at a Sunshine Coast pub in July of 2020. After drinking and playing pool, the victims, aged 22 and 24, had reportedly offered a woman a ride home. Around the same time, Gurney and another man got out of an Uber and approached them, with the latter saying, "What are you doing? Are you trying to hit on my missus, mate?" Gurney then blindsided the 22-year-old with a thunderous punch to the jaw. He continued landing blows on the victim before striking the 24-year-old in the eye socket from behind. The younger of the 2 men underwent reconstructive surgery in the attack's wake and had 3 metal plates inserted in his jaw. Gurney, a habitual binge drinker who reportedly suffered from bipolar disorder, was handed the suspended sentence after pleading guilty to charges of grievous bodily harm and assault occasioning bodily harm. Number 9. Incident in Buenos Aires. In the spring of 2025, law enforcement in Buenos Aires, Argentina, released the video of a raid on a residence in the Lomas de Zamora neighborhood. A group of officers clad in body armor and equipped with riot shields was seen using a battering ram to break through a gate. Body cam footage showed them searching the home and then interrogating a young woman on a sofa. The 20-year-old was arrested in connection to a robbery in the affluent Palermo neighborhood, carried out on a man whom she'd met on Tinder. Security camera footage showed the victim greeting her at the door. The woman then emerged calmly, wheeling out a suitcase. She was accused of drugging the man before robbing him of personal belongings and roughly $24,000 in cash. When the man regained his senses, he alerted the authorities. From the home raid, tactical officers recovered the victim's laptop as well as the clothes worn by the woman on the night of the robbery. Her 71-year-old father was also taken into custody after an unlicensed revolver was found on the premises. Number 8. Vasile Frumuzache. On May the 15th of 2025, Romanian national Maria Denisa Paun disappeared from a residence in the town of Prato in the Tuscany region of Italy. On June the 4th, the 30-year-old's mutilated remains were found near an abandoned farmhouse in Montecatini Terme, about 25 miles west of Florence. Paun had been decapitated, wrapped in a black garbage bag and stuffed in a white suitcase. The police found that on the night of her disappearance, Paun had spoken on the phone with a Romanian man. That night, CCTV footage showed a man arriving at her hotel at around 10:50 p.m. with the black bag. 2 hours and 15 minutes later, he emerged with a white suitcase belonging to Paun, the same suitcase in which her remains were to be found. He loaded the suitcase into a Volkswagen Golf and drove off. Investigators used GPS installed in the man's car by his insurance company to track his movements, and he was shown to have driven to the abandoned farmhouse. Shortly after Paun's body was discovered, local law enforcement arrested 32-year-old security guard Vasile Frumuzache. He admitted to strangling Paun to death and then dismembering her. Further admissions made by the man highlighted the case as a potential story of lust and blackmail. Frumuzache was a married father of 2, and he said that he'd met Paun on a dating app. The woman reportedly worked as an escort, but it was unclear if Frumuzache was initially aware of that aspect. He met her at the hotel and they had intercourse. Paun then reportedly threatened to disclose the tryst unless Frumuzache paid her the equivalent of $11,450. She was blackmailing me. That's why I killed her, Frumuzache told the police. Added, when I told her that I was a security guard and that I was married, she told me that she was able to reach my wife. Frumuzache strangled Paun to death in the hotel room and then removed her head with a knife. The following day, he poured gasoline on her head and set it ablaze in a garden before driving off and disposing of the rest of her remains. He reportedly drove his children to school in the same vehicle the next day. Frumuzache was charged with murder and desecration of a corpse in a case that generated considerable media attention. In Italy, leading up to her death, Paun had traveled more than 185 miles from Rome to Prato, where she went for work and didn't know anyone. In the days leading up to her disappearance, she was said to have told a friend, if they find me, they'll kill me. The authorities entertained the possibility that Frumuzache was part of a larger escort-running conspiracy with potential accomplices. At his Montecatini property, the police found a suspicious car hidden in a garage. The vehicle was registered to a Romanian woman named Anna Maria Andrei, who'd been reported missing 10 months prior. During follow-up police interviews, Frumuzache confessed to killing her as well. In late July of 2024, the authorities launched an in-depth examination of 7 years of his phone and internet communication to determine if he claimed other victims. In the 5 years leading up to Paun's murder, there had been at least 5 escorts who disappeared without a trace in the Tuscan region. The case was ongoing, and as of the latest updates, a cousin of Andrei's attacked Frumuzache behind bars by throwing boiling oil in his face. He survived and was recovering but had difficulty speaking. Number 7. Joshua Gardner. On November the 20th of 2024, Australian man Joshua Gardner and an unidentified woman stripped down and started having intercourse near the southern doorway of the Westfield Penrith shopping complex in Sydney's west. They then moved to a nearby garden bed and resumed having relations. The lovemaking lasted for roughly 30 minutes and was captured on CCTV. It took place late at night, but in an area that was open to the public and shopping complex workers. Gardner was arrested on the morning of November the 26th on charges of willful, obscene exposure and offensive behavior. He was released at 10:20 a.m., but less than an hour later he was back at Westfield. He sat on the pavement in a smoking area and began openly touching himself while ogling women who walked past him. Gardner pulled up his pants and left, but was arrested upon returning to the smoking area. He denied committing acts of self-gratification, but then started touching himself again in the back of a police car. And while in custody in a cell, he was fined $400 for the public intercourse incident and jailed for 14 days for the acts of self-fondling. At the time of his latest arrests, Gardner had been previously charged on 69 separate occasions for property offenses, trespassing, drugs, obscene exposure, and multiple breaches of bail. Number 6. Julianna. On June the 14th of 2023, officers from the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office in Florida took a woman into custody from an unidentified housing complex. The authorities had been alerted after the woman, who was only identified as Julianna, had been spotted having group relations with two of her female friends at the complex's public pool in full view of youths. The three women were reported as being fully nude, and the acts involved oral copulation, among others. Julianna's lovers fled by the time that the police arrived at the scene. The young woman, who had long red braids while dressed in shorts and a black one-piece, was approached by deputies but refused to interact with them. She disregarded their commands, resulting in her arrest. As seen in body cam footage, the woman remained combative after being handcuffed and insisted that the officer hadn't read her rights to her. She was placed in the back of a cruiser but refused to get her legs inside the vehicle, prompting an officer to flip her onto her side. At that point, Julianna started screaming, "Yo, this N-word ain't even rich, bruh," to which the deputy replied, "That's not how it works," before slamming the door on her. Two men then came up to law enforcement, one of whom said that Julianna was his girlfriend, and asked why she was being arrested. The deputy replied, "They're over here in the pool, eating each other out, bro. I got pictures of them," prompting a colleague to add, "So that's a wrap, man." Julianna's boyfriend, who lived in the same housing complex, appeared to be shocked and struggling to process the information. In a body cam clip of the arrest, which was uploaded to the Police Watch channel, a witness was seen talking to the deputies. He'd captured photos and videos of the women in the act and showed them from his phone to a deputy, saying of one of the women, "She's going to the town, bro." The deputy replied, "They're all naked," and described the content as full-on adult material. Minutes later, Julianna's mother arrived to talk to her and said that the other women weren't good friends because they didn't stand by her when she got in trouble. Before the video cut off, she told her to be respectful and shut her mouth, and kissed her on the cheek. Julianna was charged with unnatural and lascivious acts, resisting arrest without violence, and indecent exposure in public. Number 5. Kelly Cousins and Joe Firby. On August 1st of 2022, Englishwoman Kelly Cousins was recorded by strangers while actively having relations with a man in public in Liverpool's Concert Square. She and the man in the video, 23-year-old Joe Firby, had met in the gym and were on a date in the city centre. Both had been drinking heavily before openly engaging in intimate acts. Cousins, who was a mother of 4, was arrested on August 4th. She said that she faced a wave of online abuse and harassment in the incident's wake. However, it would emerge that Cousins herself had shared the footage on her own social media under the name Ruby Rose VIP. One post was captioned, "Where next? Crosby, Matthew Street, St. John's Gardens, the docks." The clips went viral, and the 35-year-old was subsequently accused of trying to capitalize on the attention, but she justified the posts as her attempting at making light of the situation in the hope that it would deter users from further harassing her. Her solicitor argued at Liverpool Magistrates Court that the one-sided social commentary on the situation was driven by misogyny. Cousins said, "We went on a date, things got out of hand, this was never planned, I deeply regret it." She pleaded guilty to outraging public decency, for which she was handed 10 weeks in prison, suspended for 12 months, and ordered to complete 40 hours of unpaid work. Firby skipped out on a hearing in September of 2022. On November the 7th, he changed his Facebook profile image to a photo of him on a boat with the boastful caption, "Not doing bad for a wanted man." He eventually showed up for court in December of 2022 and pleaded guilty to outraging public decency. He was sentenced to a 12-month community order and also had to carry out 120 hours of unpaid work. Number 4. Rosa Martha. In the summer of 2024, a report out of Russia announced that 2 women had murdered a man after he'd refused to have group relations with them in a churchyard. The victim and perpetrators were only identified by their first names. 29-year-old Rosa and Martha, aged 37, were drinking with the victim in a churchyard in Mikhailovsk, Stavropol region. They both flew into a fit of rage when the man, only identified as 63-year-old Alexandra, shut down their advances. As the ensuing argument devolved into physical violence, the women relentlessly battered him with their fists, inflicting devastating injuries to his head and torso. Alexandra died at the scene. Officers from the investigative committee reported, wishing to avoid responsibility for the offense, the accused dragged the body of the deceased to a wooded area and hid it in a hole. Footage showed Rosa and Martha in the churchyard, handcuffed and escorted by officers during a reconstruction of the murder, and their legal proceedings were ongoing as of the latest update. Number 3. Stephanie Olivarez and Tricia Volpe. On April the 19th of 2018, Stephanie Olivarez hosted a raucous party at her home on Flat Creek Road in Robinson, Texas. During the course of the gathering, the 32-year-old plied a boy in his early teens with alcohol. At one point in the night, they had intimate relations in Olivarez's bed. The woman was consequently arrested, and two versions of events emerged during the legal proceedings that followed. The boy said that he'd become intoxicated and went to lie down on Olivarez's bed. She subsequently joined him undressed and then reportedly had her way with him. Olivarez, who was dating the boy's father at the time, then told him not to reveal to anyone what had happened. The boy would later tell his therapist about the incident, noting that he was so drunk that he had little recollection of it. Olivarez stated in court that she had no idea it was illegal to give alcohol to minors. She maintained that she'd drunkenly passed out first and then awoken to the boy forcing himself on her. Her claims were ultimately rejected. And in August of 2024, Olivarez was convicted of assault and given 10 years probation. By late fall, she was granted another trial after it emerged that the boy's therapist had been subpoenaed and turned their files over to an investigator from the DA's office. Said files, however, weren't shared with Olivarez's defense as required by law. When Olivarez was arrested by Robinson police, she was taken into custody alongside another woman, Tricia Volpe. She pleaded guilty to indecency with a child and was placed on deferred probation for 8 years. In March of 2022, Volpe had also thrown a party at her home, and the allegations against her were similar to those in Olivarez's case. Today's topic was requested by Romella Carney, Bettina Mitchell 3535 and Fee Johnson. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Ceaira, Treen and James Caudill. In 2012, after moving into her boyfriend's family home in Bellefontaine, Ohio, 21-year-old Ceaira Treen started having intimate relations with his father, a man by the name of James Caudill. Together, they then lured a pre-teen girl who was a family friend into having group relations with them. Bellefontaine law enforcement reported that the girl was believed to have participated. I think the victim here got in over her head and didn't know what she was actually getting involved in, Chief Brandon Stanley told a media outlet. In the aftermath, the girl became withdrawn, depressed and frightened to speak about what had happened. She eventually revealed the incident after being pressed for answers by her mother. The woman was quoted as saying, "I'm just really sorry this had to happen to my daughter by people I thought I could trust." Treen and Caudill were charged with a felony count of unlawful conduct of an intimate nature with a minor. Treen pleaded guilty and was consequently sentenced to 30 days in jail, 5 years of community control, and had to register as a Tier 2 offender for life. The outcome of Caudill's case remained unclear. Number 1. Kiara, Nunez and Alexandra Ramirez. In the summer of 2020, the FBI announced the apprehension of 2 women involved in trafficking teen girls for commercial intercourse. The arrests of 21-year-old Kiara Nunez and Alexandra Ramirez, aged 19, were the culmination of a joint effort from the Broward County Human Trafficking Task Force, represented by multiple police departments. From October of 2019 through January of 2020, Nunez and Ramirez forced 2 teens to have intimate relations for money at an Airbnb in Lake Worth, among other locations. The women posted explicit photos of the girls as they advertised escort services on various websites. One of the victims was rescued during a sting operation in Fort Lauderdale on January the 29th of 2020. The authorities reached out to the second victim in mid-February. As of the latest updates on the case, Nunez and Ramirez were in federal custody and each faced double counts of trafficking a minor. Thanks for watching. Would you rather find out your partner was secretly an escort, or that your mum was an adult performer and be forced to watch her work? Let us know in the comments section below.